This is the next video in our ongoing series about time. In the video immediately prior to this, I talked about beat. I talked about there being measures, and that we designate a note value for a beat, and that we then assign a certain number of beats for each measure. What we're going to do today is look at how those beats are organized into regularly recurring patterns. And that means that we need to introduce a concept, an idea called the time signature. Now, many of you will have seen and encountered time signatures. They are the small number that looks a little bit like a fraction. They're not fractions, but they look a little bit like a fraction that occurs at the beginning of a piece of music. You might see 4-4 or 3-8 or 2-2 or some other seeming fraction. They're not fractions, as I say, but some kind of set of two numbers, one on top of the other. And indeed, they are two numbers, and each number has its own meaning. And the most important thing for you to understand is the difference between the two numbers. What does the top number mean versus what does the bottom number mean? So let's look at that. In a time signature, the top number refers to the type of beat that we are dealing with. And we will get into that more in a moment. That gets a little bit complicated, and so we're going to break that down and take that piece at a time. But it refers to the type of beat. That is to say, it essentially refers to whether or not the beat is simple or compound. And that tells you something about both the beat and the number of beats that you'll have in the measure. The bottom number is a note value. So, if it is a note value, then we need to know, well, what numbers equal what note value? And the answer to that is as follows. And, in a sense, this is very logical. A 1 equals a whole note, and that would make sense. And we don't see this very often, but it is theoretically possible. A 2 equals a half note. A 4 equals a quarter note. An 8 equals an eighth note. A 16th equals a 16th note. And at this point, I hope you're getting the idea. A 32 equals a 32nd note. And a 64 equals a 64th note. All of those note values are represented, these note divisions, these note values here, if you will, are represented by these numbers. So, what can I tell so far about time signatures? I can tell that if I have a time signature that says 3-8, I know that this top number is telling me something about the type of beat, the type of time that I'm dealing with. I don't know what yet, we'll get to that in the next video, but I know that it's telling me something about the time. The bottom number is a note value. That is telling me that there are eighth notes involved in this in some way. And those eighth notes are going to be significant. The way those eighth notes are grouped together and the number of eighth notes that are allowed to occur within each of the measures, that's all going to be significant and important. Now, exactly what does 3-8 tell you about the eighth notes in each measure? That's what we need to get to. Because that's where it's not complicated, but you have to understand the difference between when a time signature is telling you that it is simple time versus compound time. We have to get the difference between those two in our mind. But to understand that, you must first understand the basic concept, which is that the top number is telling you about the type of time, the type of beat that you are going to be involved with. The bottom number is simply giving you a note value. These two things in combination with each other tell you how your time is going to be organized in each measure. gives you a snapshot. It says to you that for any one measure in this time, you're going to have the following criteria in place. The following things are going to have to happen. The following things are going to be important. For you to be able to write your music and organize your time in 3/8, here's the checklist of things that must happen in every measure. And if you don't want those things, if you want it to happen differently, then you've got to change the time signature. You've got to change this to something different. So what we're going to learn in the next video is how do these numbers specifically tell you what is going on in any one measure.